Hey guys, what's up? This is Shatner's Prodigy, and today I want to ask one simple question and try and answer it as best I can. And that question I'm asking is Fabled Quasar a solitaire deck? Now, my hatred of solitaire decks has been made known over the course of any time I've ever faced Exodia in my Fabled Quasar vs. the World series, or even in my 20th episode in the top 5 list. If you look at number 3, it is beating Exodia. And everyone hates Exodia. No one likes a deck that just plays by itself for half an hour and then wins. But isn't that what Fabled Quasar does? And that's the question I'm answering today. I'm going to ask and answer that very simple question, hopefully in a nice, concise, and clear manner. So before we can ask whether Fabled Quasar is a solitaire deck, we need to understand what a solitaire deck is to begin with, so we can see if Fabled Quasar conforms to our definition. So what qualifies something as a solitaire deck? I seem to have a couple ideas here. One, a solitaire deck is a deck that promotes little to no player interaction. That means it has one course of action and it takes that course of action and has very little in the way of deviance to that course of action. For example, Exodia, it really has no other plays except for activate draw cards and activate stall cards. There's nothing in the deck that leads to variation. Another purpose of the stall deck is to actively ignore the opponent. That's right. Stall or solitaire decks take great lengths to remove the opponent from the picture. They will run stall cards, they will run instant win conditions or alternative win conditions, and they are solitaire decks because the opponent is taken out of the equation. Now that we have those two talking points, we can move on to see if Fabled Quasar fits in with the definition that I have just provided, which will be the one I use for this video. So let's see how we match up on the first criteria. So Fabled Quasar is an odd deck where it does meet the first criteria, I'll give it that. It does try its best to encourage little to no player interaction. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, like half the deck is draw cards, so you want to see your combo pieces. And ideally, if your deck works right, your opponent will never be able to play Yu-Gi-Oh! And that is because Quasar will just stop whatever they're doing before they can even do it. Well, I hear you. What about the second point? Does Fabled Quasar follow one distinct path and have little to no deviation from that path, and almost no recovery plays to deal with it if it does lose sight of that path? And the answer is no. Fabled Quasar may be a solitaire deck in the sense that it seeks to have little or no player interaction, but it is not a solitaire deck in the fact that it is not linear enough to be a solitaire deck. It does have paths that can go. You can start making Trishes and Black Roses, you can adapt to your opponent, which is something that solitaire decks cannot do. Think about Exodia. Let's say your opponent activates a card that stops you from drawing, or a card that stops you from using your Fader or your Scarecrow. You cannot adapt. Whereas in Fabled Quasar, if your opponent activates a card that prevents you from summoning, say, light monsters, you can adapt around that. And that adaptability saves Fabled Quasar from being a solitaire deck, which is good because I don't want to be using a solitaire deck. But I will also say that there's one other distinct separation that separates Quasar from solitaire decks. Solitaire decks have a win condition. And I know you're thinking, what? I mean, Fabled Quasar has Quasar, that's a win condition, but that's just not true anymore. Quasar got power creep to the point where it's no longer a win condition. And it can win you games, but it will not single-handedly win a game just because cards like 101, the Clown Blade engine exist, and they will just outpace Quasar. So Fabled Quasar isn't even a deck, much less a solitaire deck, because the deck isn't trying to beat your opponent. The deck is more about testing yourself and testing how your deck works in various situations and overcoming that. And I feel like that very distinct separation between solitaire decks and Quasar decks is what really makes Quasar not only a deck worth playing, but an interesting deck overall, and far more complex than any rank 4 spam deck on the market. I hope you enjoyed this little delve into the kind of meta discussion of whether Fabled Quasar is a solitaire deck. I hope I answered the question succinctly, and it wasn't just a couple minutes of me rambling for you. Leave your thoughts, please. I'm interested to know, because I don't know. It's a nice complex issue, and I feel it can spark a nice discussion. Anyways, this has been Shatner's Prodigy. Signing out.
Carry on my wayward son. There'll be peace when you are done.